Welcome back.
Hey, good to be back.
Today on this UBG Bytes deep dive, we are jumping right in. We're looking at this interesting mix of modern endpoint management, think Intune.
Right, the shiny new stuff.
Exactly. And how it connects with some, well, let's call them classic, maybe even old school public key infrastructure bits, specifically ADCS.
And crucially, how that connection, that handshake between Intune and on-prem ADCS can sometimes open up some juicy privilege escalation paths that you pen testers out there definitely want to know about.
Totally. So think about that sleek Intune managed device you might see during an assessment. Our goal today, let's unpack how the certificates it gets might hold a key. Maybe not literally, but a key to compromise via ADCS. We're talking potential domain admin access, maybe through something like that well-known ESC1 vulnerability.
Okay, so let's paint the picture. You've got Intune rolling devices, pushing policies, and important for us, it's pushing certificates, usually using SEP or PKCS profiles, standard stuff. And Microsoft has Cloud PKI now too, doesn't it? Managed right in Intune, no on-prem CA servers needed. Sounds simpler?
Yes and no. It simplifies some things. Cloud PKI is great for issuing certs directly to those Intune managed endpoints, sure. But here's the kicker.
There's always a kicker.
Right. For things that need to authenticate against your on-premises Active Directory, like maybe Wi-Fi using Radius or a VPN gateway, Cloud PKI can't issue certificates to those on-prem servers like domain controllers or your Radius server. You often still need your existing ADCS for that piece.
So even if you're using Cloud PKI, the on-prem ADCS infrastructure still plays a role. It doesn't just disappear.
It matters. Big time. You might even need to, publish the Cloud PKI's route and issuing CA certificates into your Active Directory, especially getting that issuing CA into the endpoint CA store, just so your on-prem systems actually trust the certificates Intune is handing out via Cloud PKI.
Okay, so the legacy PKI is still very much in play.
Definitely. And that's where the interesting attack surface often lies.
Right, let's pivot then. If Intune is often just the delivery system for these certs, where does the vulnerability actually come from? Is it Intune itself breaking?
Not usually, no. The primary vulnerability we're focusing on here isn't typically an Intune bug. It's almost always in how Intune is configured to talk to the certificate services, and overwhelmingly, that means Active Directory Certificate Services, ADCS.
Got it. So ADCS, those enterprise CAs, they issue certs based on templates. Right?
Exactly. Certificate templates. They're basically the recipes, the blueprints, defining everything about the cert, who can request it, what info goes in it, what it can be used for. And the real aha moment, the thing SpectreOps and others highlighted with the ESC vulnerabilities, is that misconfigured templates are the root cause of a lot of these high-impact crevasse paths. It's the low-hanging fruit.
Okay, let's zoom in on ESC1 then. That's the poster child. Seems like the easiest one to find sometimes. What makes a template vulnerable to ESC1? What's the recipe for that particular disaster?
It's surprisingly simple, really. Two main ingredients you need on that certificate template. First, supply and request.
Supply and request. Okay.
This is usually set through flags like C-key flag subject alt require UPN or similar require flags. What this means essentially is the template tells the CA, hey, when someone asks for this certificate, just let them tell you what name or identity to put in certain fields. Specifically, the subject alternative name, or SAN.
Wait, so the person asking for the cert can just make up the identity? They can put someone else's name in the SAN field?
If that flag is set, pretty much, yeah. The CA trusts the requester because the template tells it to trust the requester for that information. The second ingredient you need is an extended key usage, or EKU, that allows authentication.
Like client authentication.
Exactly. Client authentication, or sometimes any purpose, or even no EKU if it's something like a sub-CA template, which could be abused differently.
Yeah.
Basically, the cert needs to be usable for logging in somehow.
Okay, so combine those two. Supply and request lets me put, say, a domain admin's UPN in the SAN. And the EKU lets that certificate be used for authentication. What happens next?
Well, a user with no special privileges, just the ability to enroll for that specific template, makes a request. They use that supply and request feature to stick the UPN of a domain admin into the SAN field. The CA, following the template's flawed recipe, says OK and issues the certificate. It doesn't check if the requester is actually that domain admin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Then you take that certificate, fire up a tool like Certipy, and authenticate to Active Directory as the domain admin whose name is in the SAN. Boom. Low preview user to domain admin, potentially in minutes, just because of that template misconfiguration.
That's potent. Okay, so that's the template allowing dodgy SANs. What about other ways? You mentioned mapping, how certificates link to accounts.
Right, good point. It's not just about the templates allowing SAN abuse. How the certificate actually maps back to an AD account is also critical. You have implicit versus explicit mapping and strong versus weak mapping. Weak mapping is another attack vector. Think ESC9, ESC10.
And that depends on registry keys.
Often, yeah. Things like the strong certificate binding enforcement registry key on domain controllers. If that's not set to enforce strong mapping, or if the certificate template is missing the SID extension, that's the CT flag no security extension flag, then you might have weak mapping vulnerabilities. Checking event ID 39 on your DCs can tell you how mappings are being handled. Microsoft keeps pushing towards strong mapping, but you still find misconfigurations.
And there were others too, right? Like ESC 13 and 14?
Yep. ESC 13 is interesting. An issuance policy on a template gets linked to a privileged AD group using MSDS OID to group link. If you can enroll for that template, authenticating with the resulting cert might grant you the privileges of that linked group. Sneaky.
Huh.
And ESC 14 targets weak, explicit mappings. Maybe someone defined mappings in the alt security identities attribute on user accounts insecurely, or you find a way to modify attributes on a victim account, like their mail or DNS hostname, to match a mapping you control. Lots of angles.
Okay, so bringing it all back to Intune then, how does Intune actually become the vector in these scenarios?
All right, so like we said, Intune itself isn't usually the source of the vulnerability. It's a delivery truck. If your organization uses Intune to push out SEEP or PKCS certificates from an on-premises ADCS infrastructure, and that ADCS is configured with one of these vulnerable templates or maybe the NDS server or Intune connector configuration doesn't enforce mapping correctly, then Intune is effectively just delivering exploitable certificates directly to all those managed endpoints. We've definitely heard stories, contractor sets up Intune cert deployment, maybe doesn't fully understand ADCS, misconfigures a template, bam, instant DA pathway created.
That makes total sense. The modern tool points back to a vulnerability in the legacy plumbing it relies on. Okay, so let's wrap this up. For the red teamers, the blue teamers, the security folks listening, what's the key takeaway? Maybe an acronym.
Yeah, let's try one. How about tame? Keep these ADCS vulns tamed.
Okay, break it down.
T is for templates. Always check those ADCS certificate templates. Look for dangerous flags like supply and request. Check the EKUs, that's ground zero.
Got it. T for templates.
A is for authentication mapping. Understand how certs map to accounts. Look for weak mapping. Check those registry keys. Look for missing SID extensions, CT flag no security extension. Watch event ID 39 on the DCs.
A for authentication mapping. Makes sense.
M is for misconfiguration. Remember, these aren't usually complex software bugs. They're simple, dangerous misconfigurations, often missed by basic vulnerability scanners. Human error or lack of understanding.
Misconfiguration. Crucial point.
And E is for escalation. Just remember that user-to-domain admin privilege escalation via ADCS is real, it's prevalent, and it's a very effective path if you find it. Use tools like Certipy, Bloodhound with the Sharphound Collector, Purple Knight, Invoke Locksmith. They're built to find these things.
Templates, authentication mapping, misconfiguration, escalation. I like it. That's a really solid way to think about it. So while Intune is great, modernizes management, this really highlights that its integration with traditional ADCS and the configuration of that underlying PKI is still a critical area to secure.
Absolutely. Don't let that shiny Intune console distract you. The vulnerabilities often lurk in the PKI plumbing underneath.
All right, here's a final thought for everyone to chew on. As we all race towards these cloud-managed endpoints with tools like Intune, are we paying enough attention to securing the connections and integrations back to the legacy systems, like ADCS, that they still fundamentally rely on? Or are we maybe creating new unforeseen attack paths?
Something worth investigating for sure.
Definitely. Well, thanks for breaking that down. Catch you all in the next deep dive.